It was the wedding of the year, beautifully decorated with the scent of fresh flowers filling the air and thelator of friends and family echoing through the grand hall. But just as the groom reached for the bride's hand to say "I do," a piercing voice cut through the perfect moment. It wasn't a jealous ex, an objection from the crowd, or a mistake in the ceremony. It was his own daughter standing up with tears in her eyes, determined to stop the wedding. What could push a girl to go against her father on the most important day of his life? And what shocking truth was about to be revealed? The music stopped, the bride froze, the guests turned to look, their faces filled with shock, and there, standing in the aisle, was Kathy, 12 years old, trembling but determined. She said words that would change everything. "Dad, you can't marry her." The room fell silent. Clara's radiant smile faltered a fraction of a second before she quickly masked it with confusion. Thomas, standing at the altar, blinked in disbelief. The joy on his face melted into worry as he looked at his daughter. "Kathy," he said gently, his voice breaking. Silence. "What's going on?" The little girl's chest rose and fell as she tried to steady her breathing. Her fists were clenched, her small frame trembling. She turned to face her father, her eyes wide with fear and resolve. "You can't marry her, Daddy. She's not who you think she is." The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Guests whispered among themselves, their curiosity and unease spreading like wildfire. Clara, dressed in her pristine white gown, took a small step forward. "Kathy," she said softly, her tone laced with feigned sweetness. "What's wrong, darling? Did something happen? In just a few minutes this wedding will go from the happiest day of her father's life to the most chaotic, life-changing moment he could never have imagined. Kathy is the only one who knows. She's the only one who sees what her dad is too blind to see. It's eating away at her, the feeling that something is off. She doesn't want to believe it. She doesn't want to ruin his happiness. But truth is undeniable, and it's about to come out. What should she do? What should she do? She stay silent and let her father marry a woman who isn't who she says she is, or would she risk it all to expose the truth, no matter the cost? Let us know in the comments and click the subscribe button as we dive deep into this story. Tension in the room was unbearable. Thomas's hands clenched at his sides as he looked between his daughter and his bride. To be Clara's calm exterior was beginning to crack, and the guests could feel it. Something wasn't right. This was supposed to be the happiest day of Thomas's life, a day filled with love and new beginnings, but Kathy's words had turned it into something entirely different. The truth was about to be exposed. How did we get here? How did a 12-year-old girl uncover a truth so shocking that no one else could see it? What led to this moment where a child's courage was the only thing standing between her father and a devastating mistake? This is the story of Kathy, a girl who loved her father too much to stay silent, a little girl who saw what no one else did, and a little girl woe in one brave moment stopped a wedding and changed everything. Thomas, a well-loved businessman, a widower, and a father, had finally found love again after years of heartbreak. His daughter, 12-year-old Kathy, was the center of his world. They'd been through thick and thin together after losing his wife, her Martha, to an illness that left a permanent void in their hearts. Kathy was only 5 years old when her mother passed away. Her memories of her mother were faint. A warm smile, a soft voice, singing her eyes, the scent of lavender that always seemed to linger wherever she went after her mother's death. It had just been Kathy and her father, Thomas. Thomas did his best to raise Kathy on his own. He worked long hours to provide for her, but he never let his job keep him from being present. He was there for every scraped knee, every bedtime story, every school recital to Kathy. He wasn't just her dad, he was her whole world. But as much as Thomas loved his daughter, there was a sadness in him that even Kathy could see. It was in the way he sat quietly at the dinner table after she had gone to bed, the way he looked at old photos of her mother when he thought no one was watching. He was lonely, and Kathy knew it. One day, Thomas met Clara at A when Clara came into their life's charity gala, and after a while of their relationship, he introduced her to Kathy as his new love. When Clara came into their lives, everything seemed to change for Thomas. Clara seemed like a blessing, beautiful, charming, and kind. Or so she seemed. She came into their lives when Thomas was at his loneliest, She offered warmth, companionship, and a seemingly negligent wine. Love for both Thomas and Kathy, but appearances can be deceiving. Kathy believed Clara was the best thing that had ever happened to her and her father since the death of her mum. Clara was beautiful, poised, and kind. Had a way of making people feel special, like they were the only ones in the room when she smiled at Thomas Heffelt, something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Clara quickly became a regular presence in their lives. She brought warmth and laughter back into their home, and for the first time in a long time, Kathy saw her father's smile. Clara didn't just make Thomas happy, she made Kathy feel special. She would bake cookies with her, help her with her homework, and tell her how lucky she was to have such a wonderful father for a little girl who had grown up without a mother. Clara seemed like a dream come true. Kathy began to think of her as the mother she had always wished, for she started imagining what life would be like when Clara officially became part of their family. She imagined trips to the park, family movie nights, and bedtime stories, just like the ones her mum used to tell her. But the dream didn't last at first. The changes were subtle. Clara's sweet demeanor would shift when Thomas wasn't around. Her patience wore thin, and her kind words were replaced with sharp commands. If Kathy left her toys in the living room, Clara would snap at her to clean them up. If she spilled her drink at dinner, Clara's eyes would narrow with annoyance. "You're old enough to know better," Clara would say coldly. "Do you want your father to think you're a spoiled brat?" Kathy didn't understand why Clara was so different when her father wasn't there. She tried harder to be good, to make Clara happy, but nothing seemed to work. The more time passed, the colder Clara became behind closed doors. Clara showed a darker side. She would scold Kathy over the smallest things, criticize her for how she looked or how she acted. "You'll never grow up to be anything if you keep acting like a brat," Clara sneered one evening when Thomas was at work. But it didn't stop there. Clara's anger came with threats. "If you tell your dad what I say to you, I'll make sure he never believes you. He loves me more than you think, and I'll make sure you're out of this house for good," Clara hissed, her voice sharp as a knife. Then came the threats. One evening, when Kathy accidentally knocked over a vase while playing, Clara grabbed her arm and pulled. Then came the threats. Close. Her voice was low and menacing as she hissed, "Do you know how much that cost? If you ever tell your father how I talk to you, you'll regret it. Do you understand me?" Kathy's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. She was too scared to do anything else from that moment on. Kathy started to see Clara for who she really was. The kind, loving woman who had won her father's heart was a lie behind doors. Clara was someone else entirely, someone who was cruel, controlling, and manipulative. Kathy didn't know what to do. She loved her dad and didn't want to ruin his happiness. She stayed silent, thinking maybe Clara would change, but things only got worse. Clara wasn't just mean, she was dangerous, and Kathy would soon discover just how far Clara was willing to go to get what she wanted. Clara's behavior toward Kathy grew worse with every passing week. What started as cold remarks and veiled threats turned into something far more sinister. When Thomas was home, Clara was the picture of Grace doting on Kathy, laughing at his jokes and talking about how much she loved their little family. But the moment he left for work, the mask slipped. Kathy accidentally spilled a glass of water on the kitchen counter. Clara's patience snapped. "What's wrong with you?" she hissed, grabbing a towel to mop up the spill. "Can't you do anything right?" "I'm sorry," Kathy mumbled, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. "Sorry doesn't fix it," Clara snapped. She threw the wet towel into the sink and turned to face Kathy, her eyes cold. "You're lucky your father wasn't here to see this. He'd be so disappointed." Their trouble started one evening when Thomas had to work late. Kathy was sitting in the living room drawing pictures of her family, her dad, herself, and Clara. She was trying to convince herself that things weren't as bad as they seemed, that maybe she just needed to try harder to get along with Clara. Clara walked in her heels, clicking against the wooden floor. She glanced at Kathy's drawing and frowned. "What are you doing?" "I'm drawing us," Kathy said softly, holding up the picture. Clara snatched the paper from her hands, her lips curling into a sneer. "This doesn't look like us. You made me look like a monster." Kathy's eyes widened. "No, I didn't. I just enough Clara said, her voice low and sharp. She tore the drawing in half and tossed it onto the floor. Let me make something clear, Kathy. I'm going to marry your father, and when I do, things are going to change around here. Do you understand me? Kathy felt a chill ruin a nightmare for Kathy down her spine. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. Yes, good, Clara said, straightening up. And clean up this mess before your father gets home. I don't want him seeing you like this. Kathy tried her best to stay out of Clara's way after that night. She avoided her whenever she could, spending most of her time in her room or outside in the backyard. The weeks leading up to the wedding were a nightmare for Kathy. Clara's behavior grew colder and more manipulative, but then something happened that changed everything. One night, while Clara thought Kathy was asleep, a conversation. Clara was on the phone in the kitchen, her voice low and urgent. No, he doesn't suspect any, Thera said. Just stick to the plan. Once the wedding is over, we'll have access to everything. The accounts, Thebasinus, all of it. Kathy's heart pounded in her chest. She didn't understand everything Clara was saying, but she understood enough. Clara wasn't just mean or controlling, she was dangerous. And Shaw's planning something that could ruin her father's life. Kathy knew she couldn't stay silent anymore. She had toasted up the wedding, but how could a 12-year-old girl convince her father that the woman he loved was not who everyone thought she was? Kathy decided to start watching Clara to find evidence for her dad, but unfortunately, Clara knew Kathy was watching her, and she knew the little girl was sharper than most people gave her credit for. Kathy's presence was a problem, a threat to the smooth execution of her plan. Clara had spent months carefully weaving her web, gaining Thomas's trust, charming his friends, and inserting herself into every corner of his life. Clara knew that as long as Kathy was around, her plans would always be in jeopardy. That's when Clara decided Kathy needed to go. She decided to send Kathy off to a boarding school. Clara needed to make sure Thomas believed it was the right decision. She needed him to feel like he had no other choice, and that meant framing Kathy for something big, something that would convince Thomas his daughter was acting out and needed structure. It happened on a quiet afternoon. Clara had been humming to herself, organizing some of her jewelry in the bedroom, when she called Kathy in. Sweetheart, Clara said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness, can you help me with something? Kathy, wary of Clara, but unwilling to disobey, stepped inside. What is it? I need you to hold on to this for me, Clara said, handing Kathy a velvet jewelry pouch. Just for a minute while I finish sorting these. Kathy took the pouch without a second thought. She stood there, quietly waiting for Clara to finish, but Clara seemed to take her time. After a few minutes, Kathy asked, can I put this down now? Of course, Clara said, smiling. Just set it on the dresser. Thank you, sweetheart. Relieved, Kathy placed the pouch on the dresser and walked back to her room, happy to be away from Clara. But what she didn't know was that Clara wasn't done. Later that evening, Clara stormed into the living room, her face a mask of shock and betrayal. Thomas, she cried, clutching the empty jewelry pouch in her hands. Something's missing. My necklace. The one you gave me, it's gone. Thomas looked up from his book, alarmed. Gone? What do you mean? I just had it this afternoon, Clara said, her voice trembling. I don't want I just had it. To accuse anyone, but I think Kathy was the last person who had it. Kathy, who had been sitting quietly on the couch, froze. I didn't take anything, she said, her voice rising with panic. She asked me to hold it, but I gave it back. Is that true, Kathy? Thomas asked, his brow furrowed. Yes, I swear, Kathy said, tears welling up in her eyes. I didn't take anything, but Clara's tears were more convincing. Thomas, I don't want to believe she'd do something like this, but maybe she's struggling more than we realized. Maybe she needs help. Structure, Thomas sighed, heavily laying a hand through his hair. Kathy, this is serious. If you did take it, you need to tell me now. I didn't. Kathy Creetsi's lying. I didn't do anything. Vanessa dug through Kathy's backpack and found the necklace hidden inside. Kathy's protests fell on deaf ears. Dad, I didn't do. I swear, she cried, but Clara's tears and accusations drowned her out. Clara's lips tightened, her eyes glistening with fake sadness. Thomas, maybe we should think about sending her to boarding school, at least for a little, while it might give her the discipline and stability she needs that night. Kathy sat in her room, tears streaming down her face. She couldn't believe what was happening. Clara had framed Hershey washer of it, but how could she make her father see that he had looked so disappointed, so unsure of what Tobolev? The next morning, Thomas sat down with Kathy at the kitchen table. His expression was soft but serious. Kathy would need to talk, he said. Kathy looked up at him, her eyes reddened from crying. Daddy, I didn't do it, she whispered. I didn't take anything. Thomas sighed and reached for her hand. Sweetheart, I want to believe you, I really do, but Clara wouldn't leave out something like this. We both saw the necklace in your backpack. I know it's been hard for you to adjust to having her in our lives, and I know you miss your mum, but I think maybe this is part of the problem. What do you mean? Kathy asked, her voice trembling. I think Clara's right, Thomas said gently. Maybe some time away would. What do you mean? Help you adjust. Boarding school isn't a punishment, Kathy, it's a chance for you to grow and learn. Kathy pulled her hand away, her heart breaking. You're sending me away, she said, her voice cracking. Because of her. It's not because of her, Thomas said quickly. It's because I want what's best for you. I know it's hard now, but you'll see this will be good for all of yous. That evening, Kathy decided she couldn't stay silent anymore. She had to tell her father the truth, not just about the stolen necklace, but about everything Clara had done. She waited until Clara was out of the house, then found Thomas in his study. Daddy, she said, her voice trembling, I need to talk to you. Thomas looked up from his paperwork and smiled softly. What is it, sweetheart? Kathy hesitated, her heart pounding. It's about Clara. Thomas's expression shifted, a hint of frustration flickering across his face. Kathy, we've talked about this. You need to give her a chance. No, Daddy, listen, Kathy said, her voice rising with desperation. She's not who you think. She's been mean to me. When you're not around, she yells at me, and she said, if I told you, you wouldn't believe me. She chef-framed me for the necklace. Thomas frowned, leaning back in his chair. Kathy, I know this has been hard for you, but you're letting your imagination get the best of you. Clara loves you, and she loves me. She's trying her best to make this work. She doesn't love me, Kathy. She's pretending. She's only doing this to get what she wants. Kathy, enough, Thomas said firmly. You're a smart girl, but you're still a child. You don't understand how complicated things can be. Clara has done nothing but try to make you feel welcome. Then you need to give her a chance. Kathy's heart shattered. She wanted to scream to make him see the truth, but the look on his face told her it was no use. He wouldn't believe her not yet. Kathy needed undeniable proof that Clara wasn't just bad news. She was dangerous. The following day, Kathy was cleaning her room when Clara's phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. Kathy glanced at it, curiosity gnawing at her. Clara always kept her phone close, almost as if she was afraid someone might see what was on it, but today she had left it behind. Kathy hesitated, her heart pounding. She knew it was wrong to snoop, but she couldn't ignore the nagging feeling in her chest. This might be her only chance to find out what Clara was hiding. With trembling hands, Kathy picked it up, the phone, and unlocked it using the pattern she had secretly memorized. She scrolled through the messages and froze when she saw a name she didn't recognize. Nathan. Kathy's hands trembled as she scrolled through Clara's phone. She had seen Clara hide her phone countless times, quickly tucking it away whenever her father walked into the room, but now, for the first time, Kathy was holding it, and what she found would change everything. Nathan's messages were direct, almost commanding. He mentioned Ned something about signing paper before the wedding and gaining full control of the accounts. Kathy didn't understand everything, but she recognized her father's name in the conversation. They were talking about her dad's money and business. Then came Clara's response, her words cold and calculating. She assured Nathan that everything was going smoothly, that Thomas trusted her completely. Kathy's stomach twisted. Ascathy's stomach twisted red. Clara's confident declaration, he's so blinded by love he'll sign anything I put in front of him. Kathy sighs. As she scrolled further, the conversation wasn't just about money, it was about something much worse. Clara told Nathan not to worry, saying she already had the poison ready and that the plan would be executed after throwing poison. The word echoed in Kathy's mind like a thunderclap. She read the message over and over, hoping she had misunderstood, but there it was clear as day. Clara was planning to get rid of her father. The poison would be used during the honeymoon, when no one would suspect foul play. As if that weren't enough, Kathia uncovered another horrifying truth. Nathan wasn't just an accomplice, he was something more. The way Clara spoke to him in the messages, the playful tone, the teasing remarks revealed the truth. Clara and Nathan weren't just partners in crime, they were lovers. Kathy went straight to the photos on the phone, hoping to find something that would confirm what she already suspected. Her heart sank as she opened the gallery. They were dozens of photos of Clara and Nathan. Some were casual, like selfies taken at a restaurant or in a car. Others were more intimate, showing them holding hands or laughing together. Photo taken in what looked like a hotel room showed Nathan with his arm around Clara's waist. The two of them were smiling at the camera like they didn't have a care in the world. Kathy's stomach turned. She had always suspected that Clara didn't truly love her father. But seeing the proof was worse than she could have imagined. Clara wasn't just lying to Thomas, she was betraying him in the worst possible way. Kathy's breath hitched as she pieced it all together. Clara was using her father, pretending to love him, while secretly plotting to take everything he had, and Nathan, he was helping her execute the plan they were both working for. Thomas's business, competitors, the very people who wanted him out of the picture for good. It was all too much for Kathy to process. The woman who had been smiling at her father just moments ago, who had been playing the role of the loving fiancé, was nothing more than a fraud. Clara wasn't just after the money, she was after Thomas's life. The messages painted after Thomas's life-chilling picture. Clara had orchestrated everything from the moment she met Thomas. She had carefully gained his trust, playing the part of the perfect partner while secretly planning his downfall. She had been hired by Thomas' competitors to sabotage him, and now, with the wedding only days away, her plan was nearly complete. But Clara wasn't working alone. Nathan, her lover and accomplice, had been coordinating with her from the start. He was the one managing the financial side of things, ensuring that once Thomas was gone, Clara could transfer everything, the money, the business, the assets, into their hands. Kathy felt sick. The man she loved most in the world was being manipulated, betrayed, and targeted for something far worse than heartbreak, and the woman be hindered. All was right there, in their home, pretending to be part of their family. Kathy quickly uploaded all she discovered in a USB drive, including recordings of a silent call Clara took when she thought everyone was asleep. For Kathy, the discovery was both terrifying and heartbreaking. She had always hoped Clara's cruelty, while smithing, she could endure something that would fade over time, but this was different. This wasn't about hurt feelings or sharp words. This was about life and death. She wanted to run to her father, to shake him and scream the truth until he believed her, but she knew she couldn't. Not yet. Clara was too clever, too manipulative. If Kathy confronted her now, Clara would twist the story, just like she always did. Kathy needed more than just words. She needed a way to prove, without a shadow of a doubt, that Clara wasn't who she claimed to be. Kathy clenched her fists, determination hardening her resolve. She couldn't let her father marry Clara. She couldn't let him sign away his life, literally and figuratively, to a woman who had no intention of loving him. But how could she stop it? How could an ex-wild girl stand up against a woman like Clara? Days felt like a blur for Kathy. Every moment she spent in the same house as Clara was unbearable. Every time Clara smiled at her father, pretending to be the perfect fiancé, Kathy's stomach churned. But what made it worse was through it of the truth. The secrets she now carried. Clara wasn't just mean, she wasn't just manipulative. She was a cold-hearted liar, a thief, and worst of all, a murderer in waiting. Kathy knew she had to stop her. But how Clara was clever, always 10 steps ahead. Kathy couldn't just tell her father. She tried that before, and he hadn't believed her. Clara's web of lies was too strong, too convincing, but Kathy wasn't going to give up. She was her father's daughter, and she wasn't going to let him walk blindly into a trap. She had one goal now: to expose Clara for who she really wasn't. She would do whatever it took. Kathy knew the poison was real. She had seen it mentioned in Clara's messages to Nathan Bott. She didn't know where it was or how. Clara planned to use it. She decided to search the house, starting with Clara's room. It was a risky move, but Kathy knew she had to take the chance. Late one night, after Clara and Thomas had gone to bed, Kathy crept into Clara's room. Her heart pounded in her chest as she opened the closet door and began searching through the shelves. Most of it was what she expected: clothes, shoes, and a neatly organized row of purses. But then, in the back of the closet, hidden behind a stack of shoeboxes, Kathy found a bottle. Her hands trembled as she held it up to the light. The liquid inside was clear, almost ordinary looking, but Kathy knew better. This was it, the poison Clara was planning to use on her father. The thought made her stomach turn. Could anyone be so evil? How could someone smile and laugh with a man while secretly planning to get rid of him? Kathy put the bottle back exactly where she found it, careful not to leave any trace of her presence. She had what she needed now: the messages, the pictures, the poison. It was all coming together, but she still needed a plan. How could she reveal everything in a way that left no room for Clara to twist the truth? With the wedding just days away, Kathy knew she had to act fast. She couldn't let Clara carry out her plans. She couldn't let her father marry a woman who didn't love him, who was planning to poison him and take everything he had. Kathy also knew that simply telling her father wouldn't be enough. Clara was too good at lying, too good at making people believe her. Kathy needed a way to expose her in front of everyone. Thruding would be the perfect opportunity. She thought to herself, everyone would be their friends, family, even some of Thomas's business partners. If Kathy could reveal the truth in front of all those people, Clara wouldn't be able to Todney. If the lies would unravel. She wrote down everything she had heard and seen, organizing it in a way that even the most skeptical person couldn't ignore. The night before the wedding, Clara was in an unusually good mood. She hummed to herself as she set out her dress and talked about how excited she was to finally become a real family. Kathy stayed quiet, sitting at the dinner table with her father and Clara, her hands tightly in her lap. "Are you excited for tomorrow, Kathy?" Clara asked her, smile as fake as ever. Kathy looked up, forcing herself to meet Clara's gaze. "Yeah," she said softly, her voice trembling just enough to seem innocent. She didn't want Clara to suspect anything. "Not yet." Thomas reached over and squeezed Kathy's hand. "It's going to be a beautiful day." He, the wedding's aide, his voice full of warmth. "I'm so proud of you, sweetheart. I know this hasn't been easy, but you've handled it so well." Kathy felt a lump rise in her throat. She wanted to tell him the truth right then and there, to shout it at the top of her lungs, but she held back. She had to wait for the perfect moment. The morning of the wedding dawned, bright and beautiful. Sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the house in a golden glow. For most people it was the perfect day for a celebration, but for Kathy it felt like the calm before the storm. The house was bustling with activity. Florists were arranging flowers, caterers were setting up trays of food, and guests were arriving in waves, dressed in their finest attire. Kathy sat on the edge of her bed, clutching the USB drive in her hand. Her heart pounded. Rehearsed what she was going to say. She couldn't afford to mess this up. This was her one chance to expose Clara. From down the hall, Kathy could hear Clara's laughter echoing through the house. It was light and cheerful, the kind of laugh that made people think she was happy, kind, and in love. The wedding was being held in the backyard under a beautiful arch, covered in white roses. Chairs were lined up neatly, and the guests were seated, chatting and laughing as they waited for the ceremony to start. Thomas stood at the altar, his face glowing with happiness. He looked dashing in his sooth's eyes, sparkling with the kind of joy Kathy hadn't seen in years. Clara made her entrance with a flourish, her wedding gown trailing behind her as she walked down the aisle. The guests gasped at her beauty, whispering to one another, "Abutho perfect," she looked. Clara's smile was radiant, but Kathy could see the flicker of coldness in her eyes when she glanced at Kathy as the officiant began to speak. Kathy's hands grew clammy, her heart raced, as she looked around at the sea of smiling faces. They were all oblivious to the truth, all blind to the danger. Cloudpast Kathy clenched her fists. She couldn't wait any longer. The efficient voice rang out. If anyone here has any reason why these two should not be wed, speak. Now or forever hold your peace. She doesn't love youth. Guests laughed softly, clearly expecting silence, but then from the second row, a small voice broke through the quiet. Stop. All heads turned as Kathy stood up. Her legs wobbled, but her voice was strong. You can't marry her, Dad. She's lying to you. A wave of shocked whispers rippled through the crowd. Thomas blinked, his expression shifting from confusion to concern. Kathy, what's going on? Clara's mouth froze, and for the first time, a flicker of fear crossed her face. Sweetheart, she said, her voice syrupy and fake. What are you talking about? Did something happen? Kathy ignored her and turned to her father. She doesn't love you. Daddy, she's pretending. She's been lying to you this whole time, Kathy. Thomas said gently, stepping toward her. We've talked about this. I know this is a big change, but Clara loves us. She's been trying her best to know. Kathy shouted, tears streaming down her face. She doesn't love us. She's been lying. Kathy reached into her pocket. I can prove it, and pulled out USB drive. I have recordings, Daddy, she said, her voice trembling. I heard her talking to someone on the phone. She's working with someone named Nathan. She's planning to take all your money. And she's going to hurt you. The crowd fell silent. Thomas's face paled and Clara's eyes narrowed. This is ridiculous, Clara said, her voice sharp. Now she's just a child. She doesn't know what she's talking about. But Kathy wasn't done. I saw the messages on her phone, she said, her voice growing stronger. She's working with Nathan. They planning to take everything you have. And Dan, she's cheating on you with him. Gasps erupted from the crowd. Guests exchanged horrified glances, and Thomas staggered back, as if the words had physically struck him. What are you saying, Kathy? He asked, his voice breaking. I'm saying she doesn't love you, Daddy. Kathy said, holding out the USB drive. Everything's on here. The messages, the recordings, even pictures of her with Nathan. Please, you have to believe me. Clara's composure cracked, her hands clenched into fists, and her voice, this is insane. She's lying. She's jealous and doesn't want to share. You can't you see what she's doing? Looked at her, his eyes filled with doubt. Is it true? He asked quietly. You working with someone named Nathan? Clara stammered, her face turning red. Of course not. Thomas, you know me, Yalkno. I would never show them the proof. A voice from the crowd said Thomas Ascadone of the guests to plug the USB drive into a laptop one of the wedding planners had been using for the music. Screen lit up with the photos of Clara and Nathan. The messages followed, each one more damning than the last. Final blow came when Kathy played one of the recordings. Clara's voice filled the air. Don't worry, once the wedding's over, we'll handle everything. He won't see it coming. The crowd erupted into chaos. Guests shouted in shock, and Thomas' face hardened as he looked at Clara. How could you? He whispered, his voice trembling. The air was electric with tension as the guests erupted into chaos. People whispered, pointed, and gasped at the images and recordings displayed on the laptop screen. Clara's carefully constructed facade was crumbling faster than she could repair it. No, this isn't what it looks like, Clara yelled, stepping forward and slamming the laptop shut. Her voice, usually smooth and controlled, was sharp and desperate. She's lying, she doctored. Those photos, those messages, this is a setup. Thomas stared at her, his face pale and unreadable. Clara, he said, his voice low and trembling. What is she talking about? Tell me the truth. Clara turned to him, her eyes wide and pleading. Thomas, you know me. You know I'd never hurt you. This is just a misunderstanding. Kathy stepped forward, her small frame trembling, but her voice steady. It's not a lie, Daddy. I heard her talking to Nathan about taking all your money. I found the poison in her. She doesn't love you. She's working with your business competitors, and she's planning to hurt you. Thiegists gasped louder, their disbelief turning to outrage. A murmur spread through the crowd as people began piecing the clues together. Clara's carefully controlled mask slipped further, her hands clenched into fists, and Her voice grew sharper. Enough of this nonsense, she snapped. Thomas, are you really going to believe a 12-year-old over me after everything we've been through? The room seemed to freeze. In that moment, every guest, every pair of eyes was fixed on Clara. The silence was heavy, suffocating, and for the first time since Kathy had spoken, Clara looked genuinely shaken. Her mask of confidence was slipping, and she knew it. Clara's darkened, her shoulders stiffened, and for the first time her true self began to show. The sweetness in her voice was gone, replaced by something colder, sharper. This is ridiculous, she snapped. Do you hear how crazy this sounds? But Thomas didn't look convinced. His gaze was hard, cold, an unwavering swear. The question, Clara, he said, his voice like steel. Are you working with Nathan? Of course not, Clara stammered. Of course not. The voice breaking. I don't even know who that is. Stop talking, Thomas, said his voice, rising for the first time. The room fell silent again, the authority and his tone cutting through Clara's protests. Kathy clicked on another one of the recordings. Clara's voice filled the air, cold and calculating. Don't worry, Nathan wants. Feuding's over. I'll have access to everything, the accounts, the business. It'll all be ours, and then we can finally get rid of him. The crowd erupted into murmurs, disbelief etched on every face. Thomas's hands clenched into fists as he played. Another recording. Make sure you have the papers ready for him to sign during the honeymoon. He's so in love, he won't even read them. The whispers grew louder. Some guests looked horrified, others looked furious. Clara's carefully curated image was falling apart in front of everyone. Thomas, Tornado, Clara, his face a mix of heartbreak and fury. How could you do this? He demanded, his voice trembling. After everything we'd been through, after everything I gave you, how could you? Clara took a step back, her eyes darting around the room as if searching for an escape. Thomas, I should be G. But he cut her off. Save it, he snapped. You lied, Tom. You manipulated me. You were going to get rid of me. His voice cracked on the last words, their reality of the situation hitting him like a tidal wave, realizing she had no way out. Clara's demeanor changed completely. The fake tears and sweet smiles were gone, replaced by pure venom. Such a fool. Thomas, she spat, her voice dripping with disdain. You think this was about love? You think I cared about you? You were just a means to an end. All of this, she gestured around the room, was just a stepping stone, and now thanks to your brat of a daughter, it's all ruined. The guests gasped, shocked by her sudden shift. Thomas looked like he had been punched in the gut. I trusted you, he said, his voice barely a whisper. I let you into my life, into my daughter's life. Clara sneered. And that was your biggest mistake. Unknowingly to her, Thomas had dialed 911 and called the police earlier. Just as she turned to leave, the sound of sirens filled the air. Tarch's call to the police had been perfectly timed moments later. Officers entered the backyard, their presence commanding immediate attention. One of the officers stepped forward. Clara Stevenson, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted murder, and embezzlement. Clark's eyes widened in panic. You have no proof, she screamed, thrashing as the officers grabbed her arms. This is all lies. You can't arrest me. But her protests fell on deaf ears. The officers led her away, her screams fading into the distance as the guests watched in stunned silence. Dropped to his knees in front of Kathy, tears streaming down his face. I'm so sorry, he said, his voice breaking. I should have listened to you. I should have trusted you. Kathy wrapped her arms around him, her own tears flowing freely. I just didn't want to lose you, Daddy, she whispered. I just wanted to keep you safe. You did, Thomas said, pulling her close. Oh, saved me, you saved both of us. The guests slowly began to disperse, their murmurs filled with disbelief, and many of them stopped to thank Kathy, praising her bravery and determination. But Kathy didn't care. You come first about their words. All she cared about was that her father was safe. Thomas wasn't the type to shy away from difficult conversations. He knew he had to mend his relationship with Kathy, and he wasn't going to let another day go by without doing so. Knocking gently on her door, he waited until he heard her faint come in. He stepped inside. His heart heavy as he saw her sitting on her bed, hugging a pillow tightly. Kathy, he began, his voice soft I didn't even know where to start. I should have listened to you. I should have seen the signs, and I'm so sorry that I did die. Kathy looked up, her eyes filled with unshed tears. Dad, I was so scared, she said quietly. Clara wasn't just mean. She was dangerous. She threatened me, made me feel like I was the problem. And when you didn't believe me, I thought I'd lose you too. Thomas sat beside her, taking her hand in his. You didn't lose me, Kathy. I phone anything. I almost lost you because I was too blind to see what was happening, but I promise you this, I will never let anything like this happen again. You come first always. For the first time in weeks, Kathy felt a weight lift off her shoulders. It wasn't going to be easy, but it was a start. In the days that followed, the evidence Kathy had gathered helped uncover a much larger scheme. Clara and Nathan were part of an organized network targeting wealthy individuals and businesses. Thanks to Kathy, the authorities were able to dismantle the operation and bring everyone involved to justice. Thomas, though heartbroken, was grateful. He vowed to spend the rest of his life making it up to Kathy, cherishing the bond they had and ensuring she always felt safe and loved. As for Kathy, she finally felt a Passetti nightmare was over, and she knew her mother would have been proud of her. Together, she and her father began building their lives stronger than ever. Months later, as Kathy and Thomas sat on the porch watching the sunset, Thomas turned to his daughter with a smile. You know, he said, for all the pain Clara caused, she did one thing right. She showed me just how incredible you are. Kathy laughed, rolling her eyes. It's about time you figured that out, she teased. But her smile said it all. She had forgiven him, and they were ready to move forward together. The ordeal with Clara had been a test of their strength, but it had also brought them closer than ever. They had faced the storm and come out stronger, ready to take on whatever challenging ails life had in store. Sometimes the greatest battles we face aren't with others, but with ourselves. But with love, courage, and a little faith, we can overcome even the darkest of times.